Hello from the beautiful city of Tangier, Morocco, and hello to everyone who's joining us online. I'm so thrilled to be joined by Ambassador Amandeep Singh Gill,
My pleasure.
India's ambassador to the UN. He will be speaking about the UNSG high-level panel's digital cooperation report later this evening. But today I'll be speaking to him about his work at the helm of the UNCCW on lethal autonomous weapons. Thank you for being here, Ambassador Gill.
My pleasure.
So just to start off with a scene setting question, um, what was the big gap in the autonomous weapons debate in 2017 that the UNGGE was aiming to fill?
The biggest gap, and this was in my previous capacity as India's ambassador on disarmament issues in Geneva. The gap was about the kind of stakeholders you needed to see in the room. So we had discussions involving military experts, diplomats, and international lawyers, particularly those trained in the humanitarian law field. But we hadn't yet had the technology developers, the industry, and some of the more active thinkers around the ethics of AI, around ethically aligned design in the room. So I think that is what we started to answer right at the outset. But that's not the only gap that we had to work to fill.
Okay. Uh, you, you did mention how so your role with the UNGGE helped put India on basically the lethal autonomous weapons debate map. Um, what do you think India should now do to build upon that momentum in this debate?
Right. India was seen as um, a neutral broker on this issue, a country that's responsible with high technologies, the country that doesn't have an X to grind in this, and a country that's conscious of not only the security aspects of the issue, but also the developmental opportunities, the economic transformation opportunities coming out of these technologies. So that was helpful. Now, where it is headed now, I think we are headed into some strong headwinds, and that's mainly because AI has become um, a means to either get a leg up on the economic side or on the military side. So the technologies and the applications are caught up in this international struggle over their leveraging. So it's much more difficult to get to an agreement on how to control them internationally today. And even then, it was quite a challenge. But I think we made a good start in the end by agreeing on some common principles, by agreeing on a set of 10 principles, in fact, that should govern the development, the deployment, and the use of these technologies.
Okay. How difficult was it to get to that agreement, and did India's reputation as a neutral actor help in that?
It was not easy, but I think as chair, I was able to count on the support of a solid, let's say, um, middle, where you had a lot of countries that were part of military alliances, so they had their own constraints, but they were also keen to have some rules in place, some affirmations around the application of existing international humanitarian law. So also able to count on the support of civil society, which had a variety of innovative proposals and which was keen to see progress. So that was helpful. And then I must say the industry and the technology community, they brought that nuance into the room, which helped the diplomats, the lawyers, the military experts to connect better with the technology side of the equation and quickly update the discussion and make it cutting edge and make it meaningful for the world outside. So that was very satisfying, and I'm glad that the work is continuing. But because at some stage there was a question whether The work should continue, and I continue to believe that the CCW, the convention, is the best place for this discussion. It has 125 states there, those who are developing these technologies, those who are not, those who are concerned by it. So it's fairly inclusive, and it also has the rules of procedure that allow you to bring in civil society, industry, and other stakeholders. And finally, it is solidly based in the international humanitarian law framework, which is what we need to keep affirming as these technologies are developed further.
Speaking about the IHL portion of this, there is a stance on this debate that because the technology is so dramatically different, that perhaps international humanitarian law frameworks as they exist would not apply anymore. Do you have a pushback against that? Do you concede a bit on that? What's your position?
I think that's a valid point that some people in the room had and continue to have, which is that we need to go beyond affirming existing law, that there are possible gaps in the implementation which cannot just be met by better implementation, better ways of doing what is already there, and they can only be met if there is new law within quotes. So whether that takes the form of a protocol to the convention or it takes some other form, that point is being made. Now, I think what we managed to achieve in those 2 years is to put some building blocks on the table. So the principles are there as guidance, as a values, principles-rich framework to advance the discussion, to help create common ground. But then there are also these building blocks. What are the characteristics of these systems? What should be the quality of the human-machine interface in better applying what is there or what could potentially be there? What are the effects that we are interested in avoiding or controlling? So those building blocks can be put at the service of new law, if that decision is made to go down that path, or they can be put at the service of better implementation of existing law through practical guidance, through exchange of experience, through, as some states inside the CCW have suggested, kind of a declaration, not a legally binding text, but a politically binding declaration that captures the existing understandings, the existing law, but also points the way forward in some areas.
Okay. So you had mentioned in the beginning that there have been some shifts in the field of AI where it's become more geopolitically driven. It's the basis of competition. And so what advice do you have for your successor at the helm of the UNGGE in navigating these winds?
Oh, he's a very competent diplomat. I don't know if he needs much advice, and he's doing an excellent job. But I think he's conscious of this, of what I'm going to say. I think it is very important to keep this discussion inclusive, to make sure that each and every one of those concerned is at the table, because we cannot have a fragmented approach to AI policy questions. That will not hold. So that may disappoint some who want faster progress, but I think that might be the price we pay for making sure that there are no gaps globally, because if there is one gap, then it's not going to work. It's in the nature of this technology. However, at the same time, the chair has to make sure that progress is happening. And there is still plenty of white space, plenty of margin before we get to that hard question of how do we capture all this? What is the legal or political instrument in which we capture this. And I think those areas have to be worked. And the chair has done that this year. The applicability of IHL issue, for example, building blocks on characteristics, on the human-machine interface. So I hope progress continues to be made there.
I certainly hope that he is listening in on this and heeds this going forward. Thank you so much, Ambassador Gill, for joining us today.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.